get her out for you?
Oh no, I thought she was going for the cricket.
Oh, that would have been too awesome. My name is Thomas Bettini, and I am from Kingsport, Tennessee, where we are right as we are filming this. I was born in 1960, and I was exposed to music at a very early age, probably pre-birth, from my mother and her sister. I really became aware of music when I was probably 3 or 4, and I would go to my aunt's house, and she was 13, all the Beatles stuff, 1964, and I would stand there as a little kid and listen to the Beatles on her record player that played 45s, and put a big stack on there, you know, and they were all Beatles. And I'd listen to them, and I'd stand there and listen to that music, and I would hear those harmonies and those guitars. Then I might listen to like some Monkees or, you know, Herman's Hermits or any of that stuff, and I'd always go back to the Beatles, and I'd hear it and I'd go, man, this is different. This is like from God. And I mean, I was 4 years old, and I did have those thoughts. And I loved the Beatles all the way growing up, and then I got into heavy metal when I was about 14, and Kiss, Black Sabbath, and Judas Priest, Deep Purple, the good stuff. Blue Oyster Cult, I love Blue Oyster Cult, but Kiss, I guess when I was 15, their first live album come out, and that just really tore me up bad. And there's one song where it's just a little, the song breaks down and there's this little teeny tiny part. In fact, it's a song called She, and it's a real evil riff, and then it breaks down, it's just the drums, these jungle drums, and this bass. And it only goes for like 2 measures, and technically it's nothing, but it is killer. Just this real trudging along beast of a behemoth of a song. And then at the middle it goes that little break, and then the guitar's coming back in and it just busts loose. But I remember when I heard it, I mean, it was like I received a signal from somewhere, and I mean, man, I was like, within a week I had a bass, and within a week after that I was in a band. And my first band was called Amoeba. We were horrible, we couldn't play at all, but we could play like 1 or 2 riffs, and we just play them over and over and over. We played the riff to Snakeskin Cowboys by Ted Nugent. We played that thing in Kiss, and we would never learn the whole song. We would just learn the one riff and just play it over and over. We didn't have a singer either. And so anyway, that was my very first band, Amoeba.
So at that point, did you make the decision to play bass as a living?
Yeah.
As a career?
Yeah. At about 15. It might not have been a real hardcore conscious thought, but I knew it. Because, I mean, I became obsessed with it. I mean, I played it all the time. Took it to school until they said I couldn't bring it anymore.
What school system were you in?
I went to Dobbins Bennett. And does that explain a lot?
It helps.
And but I stayed with it, and then of course my band Amoeba, no platinum records there. We lasted 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you know, and then I started actually kind of getting good, and I hung with it, and I started, you know, I joined my very first real band was a band in high school. I think it was called Sly Creech. Sly Creech was some old moonshiner that had been arrested in Virginia in the 60s or 70s, something like that, and they read about it in the paper and thought it was a cool name.
You took formal training, but you were in the band?
No.
No one taught you how to do anything?
No, actually, I taught myself. I got to where my hands could do it, and then I got to a point where I knew that I needed to learn some basic laws of the neck and how it works. So I went downtown, and I didn't know anything. I've got hair down to here and a Led Zeppelin t-shirt on, and I walk in this place that's not there no more, called the Guitar Shop, and all they sold was guitars, acoustic guitars, some electric basses, and very few electric guitars, because mainly it was a bluegrass hangout. And I mean, these people were as straight looking as you get, and I walked in there and I looked like, to them, I'm the Antichrist, and I'm carrying this electric bass. So there's the Antichrist with his scepter. And I walk in, it's not even in a case, man. I just walk in, I went, hey, I want to take bass lessons. And this old man and old lady run it, and they said, well, we actually have a kind of a young guy that teaches in the back. He really teaches mandolin, you know, but he can play anything. And he had just got done with the lesson. They went back there and they said, come out here. And his name is Audie Ratliff, and now he's a world famous mandolin builder. He's got a factory down here in Church Hill.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, those mandolins are sold worldwide, and they start at like $3,000. Oh yeah. Plus he's left-handed, and this is really why he took me on. I'm left-handed, and if you'll notice, I play this thing strung backwards. This string should be up here, and this is a whole nother story. But anyway, Audie come out, and he looked at me, and I'm this freak, you know, and he's a young bluegrasser guy, but he had been a teenager in the 60s, so he could dig on some, you know, old pop stuff. And he said, well, come back here and talk to me. And he said, play that thing, you know, can you play? And I said, well, yeah, a little bit. And it's a right-handed bass. I just flipped it over, you know, and started playing it. And he just didn't say a word. He just sits there and looks at me. And he says, I'm left-handed. And then he's got this $5,000 left-handed Martin. And I said, oh, wow, you know. And he goes, well, I will teach you. And he just taught me, you know, basic theory, the ABCs, and a couple of scales. And I took lessons from him for about 3 months. Oh, and during the course of it, we did become great friends. He actually started taking me out with his band to take up money at the door. I was 15. In the middle of this, as I'm starting to get good, Audie, he's like, well, you know, if there's like a song you want to learn, you can bring me the record, and I'll figure it out for it if it's over your head, and I'll come back and show it to you. And I said, okay. So I brought him Rush 2112. Now I'm going to tell you what, this is no record for a beginner bass player. I mean, go for it, you know, go for it. But, I mean, there's some technical stuff in there. I said, man, I want to learn song one off side one, which is a song called Anthem. And it's pretty quick. So I come back next week, I'm like, hey man, did you learn it? Did you learn it? And he's got this deadpan look. He just hands that record back to me. He goes, don't bring me any more records. I went, well, why not? He goes, I like some rock. He said, but this is just going somewhere I don't even want to go. He said, that's bass player's crazy, you know. I said, well, man, he's good. And but Audie did figure out the riff and taught it to me. And then after about 3 months, I come in one day and he goes, well, just play your hardest stuff. And I started playing, and after a few minutes, he said, we're done, go out and play. So I did. And I think I was 16. My mama threw me out when I was 18, so I went and lived with my grandparents in Johnson City. Now, Johnson City, I mean, you know all about that. I mean, that was rock and that was like being in Los Angeles to me, and all the rock bands. So then I started playing local in Johnson City, and I'm in a bunch of different rock bands. Plus, I ran sound, ran lights, did production work like that for anybody that would, you know, hire me. Hell, I'd work for free back then. You know, I just wanted to be around it. And then I went on the road as a light man in 1983. I was with that band. We toured all over the East Coast. I was with them for like, I don't know, 3 months or something, and we had this terrible car wreck. We went back to Winston-Salem, and they said, look, we're going to get better and we're going to start the band up, but we're going to fire that bass player. Would you like to play? And so I wound up joining them, and we got a guitar player that I knew from Johnson City, and I took him to North Carolina with me. And then we wound up being on the road There's this hardcore metal band in 1984 to like 86 or 87 called Apprentice. And we were well known on the East Coast. And then that broke up, and I was in one or maybe one other band, and then I got hooked up with Jackal. We got signed to Geffen Records in 1991, I think. By then, from 87 to 91, we'd gone through 3 singers. We found the man that we needed, and we immediately hit the road. Did all up and down the East Coast. Our first gig was a bowling alley in Cohost, New York, I swear. And we played all over the place up there in the dead of winter, snow everywhere, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania. We started really trying to get a record deal, and we showcased for a bunch of different record companies and stuff. Then we got signed to Geffen. That's who we wanted to be with. We wanted to be with John Colonial, and he came and seen us in Atlanta and signed us. We went and made records, toured the entire United States many, many times. And let's see, who have we played with? So on tour with Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, Leonard Skinner, Kiss, ZZ Top, Bruce Dickinson, anyway, a bunch. And then like in Europe, we did a bunch of festivals. We're like in one day on the same bill. I mean, we'd be on the same bill as White Snake, Peter Gabriel, God Almighty, and Sass Jordan. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And we played all over Europe doing that. Then in 2000, I'd had enough.
So, what brought you back here, back home?
This is where I live. It's where I'm from, and I just came home and I started working on an original project with a band around here, and it went on for a couple of years. We played out, and then I just started playing just local. And I kept telling myself, you know, if nothing else takes off again, you know, I'm just going to play local and have fun with it. But and I played local and I paid my bills just with the bass, just here, local, playing the Tri-Cities. But it just kept getting harder and harder, and the money's going down instead of up, and it's just, I've done it for so long, and it's not that I mind it. I don't mind playing a club versus an arena. I mean, it's still playing. To me, it's still playing, and I love it. But when you're playing playing in clubs on a smaller level, I mean, there's a lot more work. You do a lot more work. It's harder. It's way more personal. And plus, you're having to handle all the business, and these club owners, God Almighty, they're trying to pinch a dollar any way they can. And it just turns into, you know, you're constantly watching your back. And I mean, after a while, I still do it. But finally I come to the conclusion, I need to learn how to do something besides play this guitar that actually pays some money and won't cost me $5 million to go to school. So I went to massage school. So during the day, actually, you know, I work at a chiropractor's office, and there ain't no incense and tinga bells going on in there, man. I mean, I'm on a mission. I wring these people out like a wet wash rag. And then on the weekends, I go out, strap in, and go out and play rock and roll. Are we Phil? Are you ready?
Yeah, ready to go.
All right. We're going to boil strings. Here we go. Yeah. This is about a 1999 Ernie Ball Stingray Music Man 5-string bass guitar. It is left-handed neck support system. Unwinding the string. Now these strings have been boiled. They've already been boiled probably 10 times. They used to be, all this right here used to be covered in this felt. Went all the way to the end, and it's just been totally burned off. And I have to do this really often unless I put on new strings, because there's something in my sweat. I guess I'm very acidic. There's something in my sweat. I can put a brand new set of strings on and play hard for an hour, they're dead. Strings cost anywhere from $35 to $100. So you boil them. It's like the resurrection of the dead. Let me step over here. That's a big B string right there. Then you wind them up, just like they came out of the pack. I have done this in 15-minute breaks, playing 4-hour shows in nightclubs. I've run a 100-foot extension cord out the back door of a nightclub and put a hot plate out in the parking lot with a beat up pod on it, throw a set of strings in it, cook them, throw them back on the bass, run in, play another set. I've done it like 3 times in a night. Them were the good old days. 100-foot extension cord. I think what it is about the boiling, when you put the alcohol in there, it's just, it's a chemical reaction between the chemicals of the alcohol and the heat. It cleans these strings. These strings, it's just not one piece of metal. It starts with a wire, one wire, and then it's got a wrap around it. And that wrap, in between each wrap, you've got a groove, and like your skin, when you're playing, it's eating the skin off. And so there's skin, dirty skin, sweat, crud, rust, funk, smoke, whatever chemicals and substances you've been putting in your body, they're coming out of your sweat. Alright, then we'll come over here. Lay the strings in. I like to put the biggest ones on the bottom to put the most heat in them. Just stack them up. Then just barely cover the strings with water. Set that on there. And then you need about a half a bottle of alcohol to do it good. But I usually try to put just a little bit more. One thing you got to remember is once this stuff starts boiling, don't ever stick your head over that to look in, because this can ignite at any time. One stray breeze and them fumes will light right up. I'll give it a little extra. Also, there's funk and crud all over the bass from where you played last week, so then I like a clean bass. give it a couple little squirts. Now check this out. See this bridge right here? This is called the bridge. That's a saddle that string lays over. Well, that spring right there, if you can you see the crud, the funk that is built up right there? I mean, all the way across. I mean, it's nasty. Rust and skin and just funk. Get funky. But yeah, man, I like them. I like them clean. I used to try to clean all that funk off of there when I first got this bass, but that didn't last long. Funk. That looks pretty good. Okay, now back to Cook Center. How close can you get to there without getting lit up? That's the alcohol. That froth, that is the alcohol. Water don't do that. What we do is we let this cook till that froth is gone. When that froth is gone, they're pretty much done. And that'll burn, depending on how much alcohol you put in there, 5 minutes like that. I use a big pointy stick, and every couple of times, every couple of minutes, I'll flip them over.
How often has that flashed up on you?
Oh, a bunch. It's done it in here several times. You just got to get something like an album cover to lay on top of it, something, or a plate. It'll go right out. But you want to do that quick because the flame's burning up your alcohol. And if you let it go too long, I mean, then you're just back to water.
How big's your fireball?
Oh, man. I mean, it goes up high. The initial burst, I mean, it goes this high. And then it settles down to, I mean, it's big. You can burn your house down. I've burnt my eyebrows off. I've burnt my hair up. I've still actually got scars on my hands from burning my hands. I almost set this girl's house on fire in South Carolina one time. She flipped out.
And you've been doing this how long?
Since I discovered this process in 1988, 20 years.
And how'd you come up with it?
Because strings were so expensive. I mean, they're very expensive. And I didn't have any money. And strings, I mean, when you play, I like a real crisp sound with a lot of treble, real like piano tone. And once a string dies, it loses all that treble and upper harmonic stuff. And it just sounds like a big boom, boom, boom. And that really ain't the tone that I'm after. Hey, now check this out. Can you see that yellow stuff on the top?
Yep.
Funk.
Really? Huh.
Funk, nastiness, crud. Oh yeah, when I was on the road, I had a backpack, and it had a hot plate in it, and 100-foot extension cord, and it'd always have a couple of bottles of alcohol in it. I mean, and I amassed sets of strings. I had 50 sets of strings. I'd just have to wild boil and rotate them, and I kept them in a briefcase. And I had one side were dirty, and one side was clean. And as soon as I get done with one, I just wind them all up together, throw them in the dirty side, and go get a clean set. When all of them got dirty, I'd boil them. I even used to have like a $200 micrometer that I would measure the diameter. of these strings because they're measured in thousandths of an inch, They're about done. This, even though this thing hasn't flamed up, I cannot stress enough how careful you have to be. And it happens so fast. I mean, it could happen at any time. They're just about done. Alright, they're done. Take them bad boys out. They're pretty hot. Don't forget to turn off the stove. And you come back over. Always unwind the bee first, because it goes deadest fastest. I just want to get them dried as quick as I can. Give that thing a little pop like that. Get your towel, run that string through there. Now here's what sucks about used boiled up strings. That thing's been wound up like that tight for days and months, and it don't like to unwind. And then you get to fight it back into the hole. This part's kind of like getting your keys out of the car with a coat hanger. Back that bad boy out to about right there. Then take the A. Funk. Now eventually these strings they're not gonna live a whole lot longer. See that right there? You're down to that core wire. Then there's one wrap. It gets up here and there's the felt, and then there's the big final wrap on it. Well, it ain't going to be long before this keeps unraveling, and then that's going to break, and it'll just eventually be too short to use. If it wasn't for that, I've had some strings, man, I've boiled 30 and 40 times. I swear. Come on, get in there. This is the big D string. Every one of these strings is a specific diameter. B's are usually from 125 thousandths to 130 thousandths of an inch. E's are 100 to 105 thousandths. A 80 to 85 thousandths. D 60. G 45 thousandths. That's 45 thousandths of an inch thick. And there's lots of bass players that are kind of down on 5 strings. I like them both, 4 and 5 strings, but the 5, I mean, it just, you can do so much more. You can, what? So now you wind that bad boy on there. And I'll show you a trick here. If you'll notice, I've kept all these things pulled back like this instead of pulling it all the way back up in there. When I start winding this, as it winds, that string turns, and that ball back there, that thing will start turning. If you pull it up in there and then start putting tension on it, that ball won't turn, but that string's turning, and it's the same thing as winding up a rubber band on a little airplane. You know what I'm saying? So that ain't good for string performance. And then you wind her up and down there, watch that thing pull through. And there you go. Another thing about bowling strings is most people don't appreciate it when you do it at their house because they don't like the smell of a chemical factory. Another alternative to boiling strings is soaking them. You can get the same result if you'll soak them in just raw alcohol for anywhere from 6 to, overnight. But you gotta have time to do that. And when I was on the road, I also had a big Tupperware bowl that I'd fill with alcohol and have, at any given time, there'd be 10 sets of bass strings in there soaking. The downside to soaking, though, is lots of rust starts accumulating. And next thing you know, all your alcohol's full of rust. Alright, then gotta tune that bad boy up. Turn everything wide open. We got that tuner. And we're going to tune this big beast to B. F sharp. Look, it's already right on B. What you got to do, you put them on, then you got to stretch them out. And A sharp. Back up to B. And we got B right on the money. And A, E, something S. Bowling does weaken them, and many times I've gone to do this and stretch them, and it just pop. After you just spend all that time bowling them fresh strings. They're a lot better than they were. You want to hear it through an amp now?
Oh yeah.
It's nice and...
Oh yeah.
This better go on a spaceship to where I've been dead for 300 years. So anyway, there you go.
greasy now, though. Let's see here.
Let me get a towel.